All right. So we got mostly family members, some current or prospective students, lots of seniors, a couple people ahead of the curve with being a junior. And we have a lot of people with a lot of questions, Kevin. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right, looks like I'm unmuted here, so we're ready to go. Yeah, I'm Kevin Paskvan, Director of Financial Aid at Ohio Wesleyan. I've been here for about 10 years. And I'm going to go ahead and cover everything, all the nuts and bolts about financial aid. And Laurie, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. Good evening, everybody, or I guess it could be afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. My name's Laurie Patton. I'm the Director of Admission here at Ohio Wesleyan. I'm also a graduate of OWU, graduated from here in 1995, and I have a daughter who graduated from here in 2022 and a son who spent a little time here as well. And I'm thrilled to be here tonight to support Kevin and help answer any questions, mostly about scholarships and how scholarships combine with financial aid, but just to help work through the session tonight. So glad you're all here.
All right, now I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm a little rusty on these Zoom meetings, so please bear with me. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention too, I currently have 4 kids in college right now. I got 2 at Ohio Wesleyan and 2 at some other private schools. So I can answer some of your questions from a parent perspective as well. So again, I mentioned I'm Kevin Paskvan, Director of Financial Aid, and let me go ahead and advance my slide. First slide here basically is going to cover like what we do in the financial aid office. We're your best source of free financial aid information and assistance. We assist students with the application process regarding the FAFSA. Now, there's a lot of things that have changed with the FAFSA for the 24-25 cycle, so we'll do our best and help you through that particular area. We determine your eligibility for financial aid, and we provide a balance of free aid, employment, and, of course, student loans. We also notify students of what types of financial aid that they're eligible for. And we develop working relationships with our students and parents and families. What we have is 2 financial aid associate directors in our office, and we actually just split the alpha in half. Nancy Sanford gets the beginning of the alpha, and then Amy Capel gets the tail end of the alpha split. And their contact information is on our website, so if you wanted to reach directly out to them, they can certainly help you with any questions that you might have.
Kevin, one quick thing I wanted to add was that the admission office and the financial aid office at Ohio Wesleyan work really closely together. That isn't always the case at every college, but sometimes students and families will contact their admission counselor first with a financial aid question, and then we can work with financial aid to help get that answer, or vice versa. So don't be afraid if you're not sure who to go to. Either your financial aid counselor that Kevin mentioned or your admission counselor is happy to help as well. Whatever answers we don't know, we'll go to financial aid to help.
Thank you. Okay, I think the next is a poll here. Abby, do you want to go ahead and launch the poll for the folks out there? And basically, this is just asking, do you know that we're going to have a FAFSA Filer Award? And go ahead and select your answer here. And Abby, I assume you're monitoring the responses and you'll show the results at the end here.
Yeah, just giving everybody a chance to answer, but I'll go ahead and share those now. So most you got it right. Most you got it right. February 1st. So way to be ahead and know that.
Kevin, right. Kevin, do you want to explain what the FAFSA Filer Award is in case anybody isn't already aware?
Oh, yes. So as long as you apply, well, it's actually on this slide here that I just pulled up. So as long as you apply by February 1st, $1,000 award will be added to your financial aid package. And that's good for all 4 years of attendance or 8 semesters. So let's go ahead and move into this slide here. So applying for financial aid, as a lot of you know, in the past, you used to be able to do the FAFSA starting October 1. Well, now with the whole FAFSA simplification, all this is being pushed back. So what the Department of Education released to us not that long ago is the FAFSA is going to be turned on or after December 31st. So I'm expecting it to show up on January 1st is when they'll actually turn it on. So if you go out to the FAFSA website around, I would say January 1st, there should be a button out there to complete the 24-25 FAFSA. But one thing that we're recommending to our students and families to do now, if you haven't already done so, is set up an FSA ID. And that's really like your username and password to get into the application. Because a lot of times when I go out and do like high school nights at schools, if the students do not have their FSA ID, it takes a little while to set that up. And a lot of times I can't help them, so it's always good to go out and get these things set up. And then as you can see, we would like to get all your FAFSAs in by February. And as I mentioned, there's the FAFSA Filer Award of $1,000. And again, it's stackable, which means if you get a merit scholarship, this $1,000 is going to be tacked on top of that. Okay. So it's free money just for filing.
And just a quick clarification on that as well. It does not require that you need to show eligibility for aid. So if you file the FAFSA and don't have any need-based eligibility, you still qualify for the FAFSA Filer Award as long as the FAFSA is filed by February 1st. So it's a really easy way to get an extra $1,000. And as Kevin mentioned, it is renewable for each year that your student is here, the 4 years. However, you do need to file every year. So if 1 year you forget to file by that deadline, you would miss out on that opportunity. So it's important to keep that in mind as well.
Thanks. And I'm really big with flow charts and things like that. So I created this slide to kind of give you a visual on what you should be basically doing. Of course, applying for admissions to the colleges of your choosing. I mentioned create your FSA IDs. Again, the student's going to need one. Parent is also going to need one. And again, I mentioned that the FAFSA is going to turn on December 31st-ish. When we receive the information back from the Department of Education, we'll go ahead and we'll create our award packages, and then we're going to send those out. Some students on occasion do get selected for verification. We're not sure how many we'll get this next year, only because the way the information is being brought into the FAFSA, maybe there'll be less students getting selected. And verification is just really the Department of Education's audit process. So we're just making sure that everything that's on the FAFSA matches up with your tax returns and so on and so forth. There's other things that they could require if maybe you set up your FSA ID wrong, using incorrect social security number. A lot of times we'll get flagged to get a copy of social security cards, things like that. Hopefully you don't do that. So pay close attention when you're setting up your FSA ID and making sure that you put everything in correctly. And again, we'll go ahead and we'll still generate an award letter to you, even if you are selected for verification. And then what we'll do is we'll ask you for those materials later. And then May 1st, of course, is when you submit your enrollment deposit. Other thing I'll mention is, start researching for outside scholarships. I'm going to talk a little bit later into the presentation about outside scholarships. And I'm sure you've already started receiving admissions acceptance letters and also your merit notifications from Ohio Wesleyan.
Kevin, really quickly, we've got a couple of questions in the Q&A related to the FSA ID. And so I'm wondering if Abby can pose those to you really quickly, and hopefully you'll be able to answer them.
Sure thing.
Yeah. Should the FSA account be set up in the name of the parent or the student?
That's a good question. Both the student and the parent will need their own FSA ID. And I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about that in the next few slides too.
All right, and then there's, if they've already created their parent FAFSA, FSA ID, how do they connect it to their students?
Good question. When the FAFSA goes live for 24-25, what will happen? And again, I got some slides a little bit later on, but the student completes their portion, and then what they do is they invite that parent to complete their portion, and what at that point in time they'll receive an email, and then at that time the parent would use their FSA ID and password to log in and do their steps.
All right, and then this, you might cover this one as well, but do both parents need an FSA ID?
Maybe. And basically what it is, if the parents are married, okay, and they file a joint return, then only one parent should need an FSA ID. However, if the parents are married but they file separately, then both parents would need an FSA ID.
All right, that's all we got about FSA IDs right now, so.
Cool. And I'm probably going to rehash that in the next couple slides. And here it is, FSA ID. So yeah, I've already kind of talked a little bit more about the FSA ID, and even on here it says the student and the parent must create their own FSA ID. And the other thing I'll mention too is the last bullet point on here is only the owner should create the FSA ID. And you're thinking, okay, what's that? Well, parents out there, don't create your kids' FSA ID without them not knowing what their username and password is. Make sure you, if it asks for an email address, don't put in their high school email, because once they graduate from that high school, a lot of times the schools shut those emails down and then they can't unlock their FSA ID. So make sure that you set it up using an email that the student actively uses, and also make sure that they're aware what the password is too. I've run into situations where the students just can't get into the system because they don't know that information. What else can I mention about this? Yeah, just make sure that they know their username and password. And because this is going to be beneficial to the student even beyond, well, after they graduate, okay? Because they're going to go into repayment on their federal student loans if they decide to take those out. They'll need to log in to the federal student aid website to see who their loan servicer is, to set up their payments. Also, if students need to take out these federal loans, they'll need to complete entrance counseling, master promissory notes, and like loan documents, and they need to know what those things are. So again, I can't stress that enough.
Kevin, what about in the case of like divorced parents?
So it's really divorced parent. It's basically, the law states whoever provides most of the support to that child is the custodial parent. At Ohio Wesleyan, we only require the custodial parent to have their information on the FAFSA. So if mom is the custodial parent, we would only use mom's information, right? But if mom's remarried, now it's mom plus stepdad. Bio dad doesn't add his information on, okay? So it's just whoever is providing the most support. So if there's a divorce situation and dad's not the custodial parent, he does not have to enter his information on the FAFSA, which means he does not have to have an FSA ID at Ohio Wesleyan. Now, if your child is applied to other schools, I don't even know if I want to go down this path, but if they require the CSS profile, a lot of them will have a non-custodial parent financial aid application. Ohio Wesleyan does not do that. We only need the FAFSA. We're trying to make this as easy as possible for you, okay?
And Kevin, for folks who don't know what the CSS profile is, can you just give a quick definition and understanding of what that is?
Yes, there's a certain group of schools out there that require the CSS profile to determine institutional aid. It's a more involved financial aid application that looks into anything from home equity to business assets. It's more involved, and it's used to create like an expected family contribution to determine institutional aid. We strictly just use the FAFSA. Okay, moving on. This slide right here is just a screen grab of if you were to go out to federal student aid and type on or click on financial aid application, what you'll see is basically the 24-25 is coming in December. But you can complete the 23-24 year. Again, we do not need that because that's for the current year right now. So fall 23, spring 24. Again, January 1-ish or December 31st is hopefully when you'll see a button that will appear and you'll be able to complete your FAFSA at that point in time. The one thing I'll mention too is the Department of Education is not going to start sending us FAFSA data until the end of January. So we're not looking at creating financial aid packages until, mid to late February, which is kind of what I'm thinking, as long as everything comes into our system okay.
Kevin, really quickly, it looks like we may have at least one person on the webinar who is a spring 24 student. So I just wanted to take a minute to reiterate that that student, anybody who's looking to start this spring, would in fact complete the 23-24 FAFSA if they don't already have one on file. Is that correct?
Absolutely. They will get, if they haven't completed a FAFSA for spring 24 yet, they'll want to get on that as soon as possible. Because it does take, once you hit submit for the FAFSA, it usually takes 2 to 3 business days for us to get it into our system. And then we can go ahead and set up a financial aid award letter for the spring semester. And then we would post that to you, the Slate portal, which is the admission system, so that you can see what your financial aid would look like. I would also, if you haven't completed your FAFSA for spring 24, once you get it submitted, please reach out to the financial aid office to kind of give us a heads up so that we can, get on that for you and try to turn that around for you as quickly as possible.
And one other quick thing, Kevin, I wanted to mention, we do have a couple of students and or families that are juniors or younger. And so I wanted to make the point here that the delay, this December 31st that we've been talking about, is really only going to impact seniors this year, that we've been told, and we're trusting what we've been told, that next year, so for juniors and younger, we should be back on the regular time frame, and the FAFSA should be open in October for juniors and younger. So sorry, seniors, that you're in in this situation, but for juniors and younger, it'll be different, and you'll have more time next year.
Thanks, Laurie. Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
Sorry. Another question in the chat that could be helpful to answer now is, when you are completing the FAFSA, which tax year are you using? So if your student is starting in fall of 24, what tax year are they using?
It's prior, which means it would be 2022.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And I'll get to that a little later on how the tax information is being collected, because it's changed completely. But first, we'll talk about the FAFSA. Again, it's collecting demographic and financial information. And if you've done the FAFSA before, we used to get something called an expected family contribution. Well, now that's going to be called the Student Aid Index, because the department likes to change the names up, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, now it's called the Student Aid Index. And then we're going to use that SAI to kind of determine eligibility. And the FAFSA is available in English and Spanish. And the benefits to using the FAFSA online, you can actually download a PDF copy of the FAFSA. I think it's still maybe in draft format. But if you were to do that and complete a paper application, you would have to answer every single question. If you do it online, it has built-in edits and skip logic so that it'll just kind of go past a bunch of questions. In the past, for the say the 23-24 year, there's like over 100 questions that you have to answer on the FAFSA, but now they've scaled it down to like 40-ish questions. So they've reduced it a little bit more than half of the number of questions that they're asking. And there's no need to manually enter federal tax information or FTI. So it automatically imports. You don't have to go in and punch in your numbers or anything like that. Okay, more timely submissions of the original application and necessary corrections. If you go out to the FAFSA on the web and complete it there, again, it's going to probably take anywhere from 2 to 3 days to get it into our system. If you do a paper copy, it takes probably like a month. If you make any corrections, again, 2 to 3 days, we'll get that information back into our system. And then as you're going through the FAFSA, if you have any questions or whatnot, there's a lot of help on each page. So if you're wondering about an answer to a specific question, there's a little help bubble that you can click on, and a little thing will come up and it'll tell you what you should be entering in there. And of course, after you submit it, you can always check the ability or the application status. So you can check your application status. And every single year, they're trying to make it a little bit more simplified. So for 23-24, they did remove like 3 questions off the FAFSA. But for 24-25, this is where they've scaled it way down. So there's a new term for 24-25, and that's the FAFSA contributor. So, the student is a contributor. They're the main source of the information that's kind of coming in, but then also parents, they're going to be another contributor. So each contributor needs to have their own FSA ID. The next slide here is just another screen grab. This is I sat through a webinar that the Department of Education had, and they had kind of a demo site. And this is, once they get through the personal circumstances page, which includes their demographic information, and it gets into here, it will ask the parents' information. Again, first name, last name, date of birth, I believe email address is underneath there, and then you click on submit, and then that information goes right to the parent.
So speaking of this, Kevin, does the parent or does the student have to do their part first?
So I have not played around with the application. I've heard a parent can go in and start their portion first. But a lot of the demos that I've sat through with the federal student aid, they've always had the student kind of go in first. So we're kind of in uncharted territory. So you can try. And we'll see how it goes.
Awesome. Then there's another question here just about a divorce situation. So my ex claimed my son last year. As per divorce paperwork, we alternate years. I am the custodial parent. Will there be a problem if my son does not show on my last year's tax return?
From what I understand now, so if you're the custodial parent and you provide more than half the support, there's a whole wizard when you get into, let me just go back a page, where it goes through this personal circumstances. It asks a bunch of questions in regards to, it's trying to glean who is the custodial parent. And as long as you provide more than half the support, then your child could go in, enter your information, and it would go to you. And I totally get you when I totally understand what you're saying about claiming the child. I'm, divorced parent as well, and I alternate with my daughter on my tax return, and then my ex also does it too. But my ex is basically the custodial parent, and she completes the FAFSA for my daughter. So you shouldn't have any problems with that. Now, the one thing is you may have to go in, and again, I haven't, been able to get my hands on the FAFSA. You may have to correct the number in household because I believe what it's looking at is the number of exemptions. on your tax return to determine how many folks are in the household. So there might be an area there where you can go in and actually update that. So if your ex claimed the child 1 year, then your household side could in theory be incorrect, and you may have to go in and update that. But again, we'll have to see, come January 31st, December 31st, when they turn on the FAFSA, how this is all going to kind of play out. Hopefully that helps. The other thing I want to mention too, if you've done the FAFSA in the past, we used to be able to use something that's called the IRS data transfer, where you're going through the FAFSA, going through all the steps, and you answer a series of questions. It would bounce you out to the IRS, and then you can transfer the information in. Well, one thing as being a contributor and you're setting your FSA ID up, it automatically pulls the IRS information in. However, consent is required by all contributors, okay? So the student goes in, and if they worked in 2022, they have to consent to have their tax information, if they filed a return in 2022, to be pulled into the FAFSA. Again, when the student then puts in the parent as the contributor, they go through and they enter their questions. They have to consent to having their IRS information brought in as well. There's not an area where you can go in and modify the tax information. It's coming directly from the IRS. Okay. So they did away with the IRS data retrieval, and now they're using this thing called the FedEx, the Future Act Direct Data Exchange. So it's a different way for that information to be ported in. Do we have any other questions, Abby?
Did just get another one that came in. Joint filing parents need to consent, but no separate FSA IDs is needed for the second parent. Correct.
That is what I understand. So I am now remarried. I'm just talking from my own personal experience, right? So me and my current wife file a joint return. So I should be able to use my FSA ID to bring both of our information into the parent section, and I should be able to go ahead and authorize that. It's only where if, say, me and my current wife filed separate returns, she would need an FSA ID so that my information, I'm consenting to have my IRS information brought in, and if she filed separate from me, she would need an FSA ID and then also consent to have her information, where then the FAFSA would combine both of our incomes, taxes paid, and anything else in regards to that together. So it would combine our tax information. Hopefully that helps.
That's all the questions right now.
Cool. Oh, this is another one of those lovely quizzes, interactive. All right, folks. When I complete,
happens when you're done with your FAFSA? Absolutely. So
all the above.
All of the above. Yes, absolutely celebrate. That's a thing to celebrate.
That it is. Yeah. In the past, in 23, 24, when you complete your FAFSA, then they always displayed the expected family contribution. They will continue to do that. So they will show you what your SAI is. And then also, you have, I think there's 10 or 12 slots to put schools in. So that information will be transmitted to all the schools that you list on your FAFSA. You might be thinking, okay, well, what if I fill it all up and I want to still send it to a couple more schools? Once the application is processed and then sent to all the schools that you initially did, you can always go back and make a correction and add another school to it, and then that information will be sent to that other school. It just come as a FAFSA transaction to that other school that you would put out there. I just thought I'd mention that because sometimes that question comes up. So when you submit your FAFSA, everything looks great and everything, and you hit the save button and you've consented and you've done everything that you do, it goes to a system called it's FPS, which is the Federal Processing Center, and that information is sent both to the student. It used to be called Student Aid Report, and then to the college, which is it comes into like our systems as a FAFSA data, basically.
Kevin, we have, sorry,
yes.
real quick, we have a question in the chat, in the Q&A. Is the SAI a dollar amount number, or is there some kind of mapping that happens with whatever the SAI is? Can you explain the SAI?
Yeah, it is a dollar amount. But the interesting thing in the past, when I received like expected family contributions, zero was the lowest number that you can have. Well, with the SAI, they're giving me a negative 1,500 for certain scenarios. So it's a number that we use to determine financial need, which actually I think is on the next slide. I kind of go into like how aid is calculated, but it is definitely a number. This slide here, I put together, these are 5 things that you should know about the new FAFSA. Again, I mentioned this already, EFC is going away. It's going to be called Student Aid Index. Eligibility for Pell Grant will be based on household size, adjusted gross income, and then federal poverty guidelines. It's all based on actually 3 formulas. There's a min Pell, a max Pell, and then it looks at poverty guidelines to come up with the amount. And what I've seen looking at current student data, and I run it through an SAI estimator, I see more students that are qualifying for the Pell Grant. In the past, in my opinion, it was so much easier to determine if a student was going to be Pell eligible or not, because it was anybody that had an expected family contribution of like 7,000 or less, they could qualify for some sort of Pell Grant. But now it's all based on these 3 different formulas, and it's really hard to tell if a student's going to qualify for Pell or not, unless you use their like SAI estimator, which that's coming up on a slide here pretty soon. Go ahead.
Kevin, sorry, really quickly, did you say though at one point in one of our meetings that the result of the FAFSA, the student gets the SAI, but it also would tell them if they had Pell eligibility?
If they use the SAI estimator that's out on the website, it tells them that. It also tells them if they would be eligible for work study. I think that's about it though.
Okay.
Okay. And then of course, don't shoot the messenger on this. The Department of Education took away the current discount for families with more than 1 in college. That's going away. So in the past, what we would see is, say if a student had a $10,000 expected family contribution, but they had 2 in college, it would drop their EFC basically in half. That is gone. The other thing with the formula is it's looking at family farms. So that's included. That used to be excluded in the past, or small businesses. There used to be a kind of an exemption if you had less than 100 employees, you didn't have to list your business, but now small businesses do get included in there. Anybody that has an adjusted gross income of less than $60,000, there's a whole bunch of questions that you will not have to answer. I believe it's the asset information that it'll go ahead and just omit altogether. So again, they're trying to simplify the process by removing questions from there. And I mentioned, yes, SAI is a number. We use it to determine need. Now, I mentioned also, if someone had a negative 1,500 SAI, we have to convert that to 0. So students don't get an additional bump of financial need until when we start billing their financial aid package. But This is the formula that all colleges have to use to come up with the financial aid package.
Kevin, really quickly back to the farm question. We have a specific question you may or may not know the answer to. If the farm is an LLC, is that still going to be picked up in this new FAFSA rule?
I do believe so. I do believe so. I think Amy was looking into some of the questions about the farm because she would get those at some of the high school nights that she would go to. I think, you're just looking strictly at the farm as the business. You would include your house, in that equation, because you live in the house, but it's just strictly looking at what's the value of the farm. When FAFSA gets turned on and those questions about business and farm are out there, they'll have some guidance out there for you in regards to those particular questions about the farm. So back to this eligibility, this is what we all use to come up with financial need, and we start building financial aid packages using this. And again, I mentioned that there is student aid SAI estimator out there. This is the URL right there, or you can just Google search it, student aid or federal student aid estimator. And if it says studentaid.gov/aid estimator, that's the right one. That's the one you want to go to. And again, this is going to require you to enter in demographic information, income and asset information. So this isn't as smart as the FAFSA is going to be. It's going to require you to answer those income questions. And it will tell you if you would be Pell eligible and work study eligible. So, I told you about the formula and how we come up with financial need. These are the 3 different areas, or I should say, types of funds that we use to build a financial aid package. So there's scholarships, grants, of course, that's free money, student loans, and then also student employment. So those are 3 different types there. Within these 3 different types, there can be need-based financial aid and non-need-based financial aid. And if your expected, I still want to use expected family contribution. If your SAI is higher than the cost of attendance, you don't have any financial need, but you could qualify for non-need-based financial aid, which is merit scholarships, some types of student loans, and things like that. And I'll show you some more on these next couple slides. And this one here is the merit-based scholarship. So again, if you do the FAFSA and you think, okay, I'm not going to qualify for anything, again, and you do it by, Laurie, help me out. The deadline for the FAFSA filer is February 1st, right?
Yep, you got it.
Thank you. You would still qualify for that $1,000. And again, that's a non-need-based award. So you'd still qualify for that $1,000 plus the merit scholarships. Then also we would provide an aid package with non-need-based student loans. And it's totally up to the student. And if they would want to borrow from them, they can always decline them as well. But here's the information in regards to merit-based scholarships. There's academic, talent, departmental awards, athletic, but of course, Ohio Wesleyan, we do not offer any athletic scholarships. We are D3, and we do not offer any athletic scholarships. I have to mention that a couple times because sometimes I'll talk to some students and about their financial aid, and they'll be like, well, I have an athletic scholarship. I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. So make sure you get it through to your kids that they do not have an athletic scholarship. And then, Laurie, I thought maybe you would want to talk a little bit more about all the different academic and talent-based and departmental awards, and I'll let you run with this slide.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So I think this is an important one to spend just a minute on, and this will vary by institution, but at Ohio Wesleyan, I think what's really important to know is that merit scholarships are awarded to students regardless of whether or not there is demonstrated financial need. And in fact, we award those in the admission office. We don't know, nor do we care if you have filed the FAFSA, if you have need, we're awarding it to students because of their merit. And we award it at most of it at the time of admission. So a student applies for admission, we automatically review that student for a certain subset of merit scholarships. And if the student is admitted, we tell them, hey, you've been admitted. And if they qualify, oh, by the way, you've also been offered this particular merit scholarship. So that's sort of part of the big financial picture. And it's what we call non-need based money, because again, you're receiving it regardless of whether or not the government thinks you need it, right? You're receiving it because of the merits of your application. So nearly every student is eligible for some kind of merit scholarship when they're admitted to Ohio Wesleyan. The dollar amount for that merit scholarship will vary depending on the student's application and the credentials that they present. Some students then might also qualify for additional scholarships that could be stacked on top of the merit award that they were originally offered. And so as a couple of examples, students who receive one of our top 2 merit scholarships upon being admitted are invited to participate in a special scholarship competition. And in that competition, they're competing for either a Wesleyan scholarship, which can be up to an additional $8,000 on top of the original merit scholarship offered. They could also be competing for the Schubert Scholarship, which is a full tuition award and would replace that original scholarship. As much as we'd like to give you the original scholarship and full tuition, we can't quite swing that. So the full tuition would replace that. So students, again, who have one of those top 2 merit scholarships are informed of their eligibility for the scholarship competition and given special access to register for one of those 3 events. And then there's other scholarships that students might qualify for if they're thinking about majoring in fine arts or theater, or majoring or minoring in music or minoring in dance. There are talent-based awards that students could apply for. Those typically require an audition or portfolio review, and those are reviewed directly by the department. There are some academic departments that offer smaller awards. Education is one of those. Business or economics is one. We have, for any students who are Ohio residents who have at least a 3.0 GPA and plan to study in a STEM, science, technology, engineering, or mathematics-based major at Ohio Wesleyan, we have something called the Choose Ohio First Scholarship. Actually, there's a number of institutions in Ohio that have received this special funding from the state of Ohio. So you might have your child looking at other colleges that also offer a Choose Ohio First scholarship. We are fortunate that we have 3 concurrent grants right now, allowing us to offer 30 total Choose Ohio First scholarships. So again, if you're an Ohio student with at least a 3.0 GPA planning to study STEM, that's a really great one to apply for. Bottom line about these other OWU based scholarships that are typically stackable on top of the existing award, we will notify you if you qualify for those. So if you're not sure if you qualify, not sure if you can or should apply, we will let you know about that, and the notification about those will be coming very soon, and students will get access to that information through their applicant portal and a notice sent via email encouraging them to check their applicant portal. The deadline for applying for most of those scholarships is either February 15th or March 1st, depending on the program. So that kind of gives a high level overview. Abby, were there any specific questions that I should help answer?
Yeah, I've got a couple scholarship questions here. What are the top 2 merit scholarships but that's the first one.
Yes, so the top two are the Branch Rickey Scholarship and the Manette Scholarship. Those are the top two. So if your student has one of those, they would qualify for that special competition that I referred to.
All right. And then can you talk a little bit about what the competition entails?
Yeah, so it's a two-part process. There's an essay writing component that students will complete before the actual competition date. We basically send the student an essay prompt, and they have an entire week to write it. It won't take them an entire week, I promise. It's like an 800 to 1200 word essay, but we know that high school students' schedules are busy, and so we want to give them, ample time to do that. And then the second component is actually during the in-person or virtual component. We have 3 competitions total, 2 in person, 1 virtual on different days of the week to try to accommodate schedules. The second component is a group discussion with faculty. And so we use the graded essay, the evaluation or feedback from the group discussion, along with the application materials already submitted to determine who might get those extra scholarships. And it's not just one full tuition scholarship and one Wesleyan scholarship that everybody's competing for. Typically, anywhere between 8 and 12% of the competitors will get one of those additional awards. And everybody who competes will at least get $1,000 extra. So it's worth, if your student qualifies for the competition, we recommend that they compete to be eligible for that extra $1,000.
And they only have to come to one of the competitions.
Correct. Great question. That has been, can be a confusing part, but yes, just one of them. One's offered on a Sunday, one's offered on a Saturday, and then we do have one that's virtual on a Monday evening. So different options there. And there's no advantage, like you're not going to be disadvantaged if you need to do the virtual one. You're just as likely to win one of those larger scholarships, virtual or in person.
Then we got a couple of questions about Choose Ohio First. First of all, has anything been sent about Choose Ohio First?
Not yet, but will be very soon. We're actually working with a company right now to do like a revamp of our applicant portal, and they are really close to being done with that. And we wanted to send notification out about all of our special scholarships, including the Choose Ohio First, once that applicant portal was finished. We understand that that should happen this week. And so our hope is that we'll be able to send notification and allow students to begin applying again later this week. We know that the holidays are right around the corner and students will be off of school. So hopefully they'll have some time over the holidays to be able to work on that application and others.
And what happens if a student applied undecided but is leaning towards STEM or healthcare?
Great question. So all students actually start at Ohio Wesleyan undeclared. So regardless of what you put on your application, you're not necessarily committing to that major, except for the Choose Ohio First. Choose Ohio First, the state of Ohio does ask us to verify that students that have this award are planning to pursue and an approved STEM major, and they actually have to declare that as a first-year student. Now, having said that, we have seen students who have shifted their minds throughout their time, and if a student were to disengage from one of the approved STEM majors altogether, then they would lose that scholarship. But what we try to do is counsel the student to potentially double major or to switch majors to another approved major so that they can keep that scholarship. It's a pretty sizable scholarship. The low end is $5,500 per year. On the high end, up to over $8,000 per year. So we'll work with students to counsel them about how to select their major for that particular scholarship, but we do our best to try to keep them in an approved STEM major to be in compliance with the state of Ohio's rules.
And Choose Ohio First is just for Ohio residents, correct?
Correct.
Right. how do they know which majors are STEM specific?
That's a great question. When that updated applicant portal goes live and we send notification about the special scholarships and programs, there will be a link included. And actually you can go out onto the website right now and just search Choose Ohio First. There is a listing of the approved majors that are part of the Choose Ohio First grant. And again, those majors were determined by the state of Ohio. So we, again, just need to align with what their rules and regulations are.
And I believe this is talking about majors, but is it too late to declare?
Yeah, if a student listed one of the approved science majors on their application and they have a 3.0, they will automatically get notified about being able to apply for the Choose Ohio First scholarship. If they wrote undecided or didn't necessarily list an approved major, if they're from Ohio and have a 3.0, it will still show in their portal because we understand that not everybody knows when they apply for admission what their major might be. You just may not get a specific extra notification about it. So it should still be in your portal. Worst case scenario, you could talk to your admission counselor about that and we can get access to the application.
All right, couple more. Is Choose Ohio First determined through FAFSA eligibility?
That's a great question. There is an element, again, written by the state of Ohio that there is FAFSA information taken into consideration. I forget exactly, Kevin, if you're able to recite exactly what it says, but something about, I'm not gonna quote it correctly, so I don't want to misspeak.
I think it's basically, it's based on need, so you want to.
The statement though says priority is given. I can tell you that we have awarded it to students with a wide range of need, some less need than others. So short answer to your question is yes, the FAFSA results are part of the equation, but not necessarily the final decision maker.
And then switching gears a bit, can you just explain briefly the timeline between like applying for admission, finding out your decision, and finding out if you're invited to the competitions?
Yeah, great question. So typically it's a fairly fast turnaround, but I will say we're blessed that we've been inundated with more applications this year than we have in the past. And so the staff are feverishly working through reading applications and getting them to committee so we can get decisions out. We typically say once a student's application is complete, meaning we have all the pieces parts, the essay, the demographic information, the stuff from the high school, it's about a 2-week turnaround. In hearing a decision, and again, that decision would come with the merit scholarship offer. And if the student was qualified for the scholarship competition, there would be mention of that in the admission letter as well. So that would all come together. And we do release decisions on a daily basis. That's important to know. Some schools release them weekly or monthly. We're releasing decisions every day. So again, that helps with the quick turnaround time.
All right, I think everything else in the chat right now we can type answers to, so I think we can go ahead and move on.
All right, I had to unmute myself there. All right, so we're good with the merit scholarships. So now we're going to go ahead and we'll move on to grant programs. Also known as free money, of course. So institutional grants. So what we provide is the Ohio Wesleyan need-based grant, and that is calculated by going back to that formula, SAI minus your cost of attendance minus your SAI equals your need. So if you have larger need, we'll go ahead and we'll calculate an OWU grant. We'll put that in there. State grants, and we do have the Ohio College Opportunity Grant. That's also based on the information that's derived from the FAFSA. Also, as Laurie mentioned, Choose Ohio First. That gets worked in there. Of course, that is awarded, dependent upon the student's major when they're, whether they're going to go into the STEM field. And then federal grants, we got the federal Pell Grant, again, that calculated from the FAFSA. And our policy is if you get the Pell Grant, you'll also get an SEOG grant. And usually that amount is around $1,000. Private grants, these would be from like outside organizations, like such as I Know I Can. That's a particular group that's in the Columbus area. They have some grant funding that they provide to some students that have attended Ohio Wesleyan. So I just thought I would mention that. But it's really institutional grants, state grants, federal grants, and then also private grants. Also gets worked in the financial aid package. If a student has financial need, there's work study. So again, merit scholarship, institutional grants, federal and state grants. After that, also student loans. If there's still a little bit of financial need after that, we will award $2,000 in work study to students that qualify. So it just allows students to work on campus, and then they get paid. It's like every 2 weeks. And we also encourage them to, do community service work. They can get paid from federal work study in regards to that. And then also, if they can get jobs in their area of like academic discipline. And again, FAFSA is required for this program.
Kevin, quick question never mind.
It's a poll.
I forgot.
I knew this one would be asked, so I made it into a poll.
Yeah, she made it into a poll. So can a student still work on campus if they do not qualify for federal work study? Anybody, just take a guess.
They're all getting it right, so.
Yeah, the interesting thing is there's some colleges, universities out there that do not have like institutional work, but we do. And actually, we have a lot of students that do not qualify for federal work study that are working on campus. I can think of a handful just right now. So now we're just going to move into the student loans. There's the subsidized federal loan, and then there's the unsubsidized federal loan. The maximum that a freshman can get, okay, is $5,500. So again, say a student receives a merit scholarship, some OWU need-based grant, and they have no need left after that. They would still qualify for $5,500 in unsubsidized loan, okay? However, if the student has a lot of financial need, they get the merit scholarship, they get the OWU grant, they would get $3,500 in subsidized loan. They would get work study as long as that need was there, and then we would finish it off with a $2,000 unsubsidized loan. The other loan that we offer too is the Parent Plus loan. So usually what folks do is after their aid has been applied, if there's still a balance left over, so all of their aid's been applied to their bill and they still have a balance left over, what they would do is they would borrow either from private student loans or the federal Parent Plus loan to cover that balance. Not everybody does that, but a lot of folks do. And when you borrow, it's for the entire award year. So say the balance is, $5,000 for fall, then most likely it's going to be $5,000 for spring as well. So you would want to borrow $10,000, and half of it would be dispersed in the fall. The other half would be dispersed in the spring. And depending on how you completed the Parent Plus loan application, you would go into repayment on that Plus loan at that point in time. However, for a Parent Plus loan, you can defer your payments until your child graduates. So you can take out 10 grand year one, 10 grand year two, depending on how much you need. And then once your child graduates or drops below half-time, then you would go into repayment on that Parent Plus loan. We have, folks do that as well. Or we have folks that just, start paying on it as they go. The other thing I want to mention too about the federal direct or subsidized and the unsubsidized. The subsidized is where the interest is deferred while the student's in school. The unsubsidized is where the interest accumulates while the student is in school. So we always say if you can make interest payments, go ahead and do that. Repayment on these loans begins 6 months after the student graduates or drops below half time.
Kevin, we do got a couple questions in the chat. Will you be covering cost of attendance for 24 and 25?
I did not plan on doing that. I was going to see if I had my chart up on my wall, which I do not, but I certainly could.
I was going to say the 23-24 amounts are on our website. The 24-25 amounts were literally just approved not very long ago, so they're not on the website yet, but should be soon, as I understand it, and is roughly a 3% increase over what's listed for 23-24. Is that a good generalization, Kevin?
Yeah. I think basically what has to happen, if I could talk, is the VP of Finance has to make the official notice to campus, and then we'll update our web pages with all the 24-25 information costs.
All right, then if we get an SAI by doing the estimator app, can we get a rough estimate of institutional grant money, or if we will get any OWU grant money at all?
The federal one does not provide that information. However, we are working with an outside company to update our net price calculator. That's on our website. So if you search net price calculator, the current one that we have out there is just only good for 23-24, but I'm hoping within the next few weeks, we can roll out an updated one that would actually utilize the new SAI calculation and give you a ballpark institutional aid package.
I think one thing that could be helpful to explain here really quickly, and Kevin, if you can go back to the slide that shows how the need is calculated just really quickly. So, if once you get your SAI, either through the estimator or by filing the FAFSA, you can calculate your own need by taking the cost of attendance minus that SAI. What you don't know is though how institutions actually fill that need, right? And so there are some institutions out there that will meet 100% of demonstrated need. Most institutions though can't do that or don't do that. And so they're trying to meet as much of the demonstrated need as possible. So you might hear about or already know about colleges that do say we meet 100% of need. That's a different scenario than a school that's not able to say that. So, but most institutions are going to have an institutional policy that determines how much of that need we're able to meet for each student. Is that an accurate explanation, Kevin?
No, it is. And really it's just our hands are really tied this year because in the past, we had a formula that we've used, I've been in financial aid a very long time and the formula really hasn't changed. This is the year that they decided to change it, and our hands are really kind of tied as to what we can do until we start getting the FAFSA data. And then also updating our net price calculators to use the new formula, which is still in draft format, but it's pretty much going to be finalized here anytime now. But go ahead.
I was going to say, the last I talked with our vice president a week or so ago, he thought that we might have some kind of estimator or updated net price calculator perhaps before the holidays, but I haven't gotten an update from him since then. So I'm not sure how close we are. If we're able to get that up and running, we'll be sure to let senior families know so that you can sort of play around with that net price calculator once it's live, once the 24-25 version is live.
Yeah, hopefully I'll find out more tomorrow because we are meeting. with that particular firm tomorrow to kind of discuss some of these things. So hopefully we'll know sooner than later. So stay tuned.
Just a couple questions regarding SAI. So is SAI basically what they are expecting parents to contribute?
No, it's really kind of an index, you know. So like if someone got a negative 1,500, we wouldn't pay anybody $1,500, right? So it's really just kind of an index that we're going to use to kind of come up with financial need. But again, we're going to have to convert, you know, negative numbers to zeros and things like that. So yeah, I can't say that it's really an index that's going to be used within the formula when we calculate an institutional aid.
And then this one also goes back to loans, which you were talking about. What is the likelihood of getting full subsidized amount if you have a high SAI?
Okay, if you have a high SAI, that would mean that you probably wouldn't be qualifying for Pell and things like that. So a high SAI means, you know, you probably have the means to pay more. So it really kind of depends on this formula. If you receive a merit scholarship and we give you OWU need-based grant, you may not qualify for the subsidized loan because again, it works into that formula. So if we met your financial need, then the likelihood of you getting a subsidized loan probably wouldn't be there. I mean, it really kind of depends on what the SAI would be, and we'd have to look
That's
at.
all the questions right now.
Okay, cool. So again, though, if students do not qualify for the 3,500, the 3,500 subsidized direct loan, we would just lump it all, the 5,500, as an unsubsidized loan. So you would still be able to borrow from that, but that's the maximum that a student can receive. The other thing I could mention too is the amounts do increase as the students progress. So their second year, they would qualify for 6,500, and that's a combination of subsidized and unsubsidized. And then for their junior and senior year, they qualify for 7,500. But these are the maximums that a dependent student can actually borrow. Sometimes students will come in and say, well, I need more of that loan. And the federal government actually puts these caps on there. Is there another question that came in? $529 plans. That's a good question. 529. The question is, I'm sorry, are 529 plans considered when looking into a determination? They've changed that up a bit, so it depends if the 529 is for that student, because sometimes what families will do is set a 529 for, you know, one of their, maybe both of their children or whatever. So what you have to do is you have to take that value that's going to go towards that child, and it's basically a parent asset on the FAFSA, and only 6% of the value of that 529 is looked at into building the SAI equation. Again, it's looking at income, assets, and 529. The 529 used to be considered a student asset, and it was counted dollar for dollar. You know, so if you had $50,000 saved up, that would get worked into the equation, and the student wouldn't be eligible for anything. But now they've pulled it in as a parent asset. I just had a question that came in. How do you apply for loans? The FAFSA will determine the student loan eligibility. The Parent Plus loan, there is a separate application for that, and there's also a master promissory note the parent has to complete. Private student loans, if the student wants to borrow from the private student loan program, you're going to need a cosigner. It's all online. Like if you go out to our website and just type in student loans, there's all the information out there about all these loan programs that I'm talking about here. But the private student loans, if you go there, there's a link that'll take you out to another website, and it has a list of lenders, most common lenders that we have out there that we use. and the student completes their portion. And when it talks about a cosigner, like who's cosigning, mom or dad, they would put in that parent's email address, and then that parent would complete their section. And again, the private loan is just like the Parent Plus loan, where when you borrow, you most likely want to borrow for the entire year. So again, if your balance is $5,000 for fall, most likely it's going to be $5,000 for spring. You would go ahead and borrow, $10,000, and it would be divided over fall and spring semesters. Repayment on those loans also is different. You can set it up whole different ways with those specific lenders. So that's it for the loan question there. The other thing I want to mention about private resources like private grants and scholarships, what I would recommend doing is applying. Talk to your high school guidance counselor. They may have a good line on where you could potentially get some additional dollars. Additional dollars coming into your financial aid package only is going to help you out. To the point where some students that bring in a lot of money, that can actually wipe out all your student loans. We've seen that with some students that have come in. Or if some of these students have a gap, they need to kind of pay their balance down. As long as we can fit it in the financial aid package, we can stack those outside scholarships right into their aid package.
Kevin, we have a couple more questions. I think Abby and I are on the same page here. We both were clicking the same thing at the same time. A question about 529, and this parent admits that they realize this is not a financial counseling session, which I appreciate. But wondered, is it better to move funds into a 529 than if only 6% is considered for SAI calculation?
Well, I guess it kind of depends on how the money is being saved right now. If it's in a bank account and it's in the student's name, then that would be assessed at 100%. So if you're talking about moving the money from an investment or something like that that's in the student's name, then yeah, then a 529 that would probably be a better option probably for you.
And then another basic question, is money in a parent's savings account considered when determining aid?
Yes, absolutely. That is one of the questions that's on the FAFSA. And it's at the time that you complete the FAFSA, what is the balance of your cash savings account? And again, it's a parent asset, so they're not gonna, it's going to be assessed at like 5 to 6% of where the value is under the parent section. It's where it's under the student's name. If the student has like $50,000 in their savings, well, it's going to take that and assess it at 100%. So then your SAI is going to be $50,000 because it's in the student's name.
And then a question about student loans. Are those loans sent by the lenders automatically when money is due, or taken out of the account automatically? I imagine you set that up, like the student or parent sets that process up, correct?
Well, it kind of depends on what type of loan. If it's the federal student loan, again, they don't go into repayment until 6 months after they graduate, right? They would log into the FSAI or the federal student aid website and enter their bank information in there and have it automatically deducted from their checking account, or they can make payments, through whoever their loan servicer is. If it's a private student loan, say you're, going through Charter One or any of those, private, depending on how you borrowed the money, whether you're going to go into repayment or make payments while you're currently in school, then you would set up your auto deduct, through that lender's website and have it automatically come out. I mean, again, some of these private loans, you can defer payments until the student actually graduates too, where again, the student is the borrower, but the parent is the cosigner. There are always different options. Like when you apply, you can do like a fixed interest, again, with the interest rates going up, you can lock in. There's a lot more people doing that, or you can do a variable if you think the interest rates are going to drop down. When interest rates were good, people were selecting variable. Now that the interest rates came up, then now they've gone up. But there's also, depending on the lender, they have different repayment options. Again, you can repay while they're in school, or you can wait until defer your payments until the student actually graduates from school. So hopefully I answered that right.
And there's another great question asked about the private scholarships, or what we call outside scholarships, and a really easy answer. The great thing about private or outside scholarships is that they go to the student regardless of where they're choosing to go to college, because they're usually not associated with a specific university. So we recommend students apply for many of these, because even if you only get a handful, that money follows you wherever you decide to go, and can, help cover what you might have taken out in loans, or maybe some of the SAI that, the family contribution piece of it that you might not have the ability to pay. So you can absolutely apply for private scholarships before you've made a final decision on where you're going to attend.
I see the next question. Does financial need consider housing and food as well? Yes. Cost of attendance include tuition, fees, room, actually food and housing. And then also we factor in maybe travel costs too. So if the students in Ohio resident, maybe their travel a little budget is a little bit less than somebody that lives outside of Ohio. Other things that we factor into is like books and supplies, and personal miscellaneous expenses as well. So all those are factored into the overall cost of attendance, so that when we do say, if a student did get their need met, they would have enough money to cover basically everything, plus books, supplies, everything. So hopefully that helps. The other thing, there's only like 2 more slides, folks. Other thing I'll cover too is special circumstance. Say you go ahead and do the FAFSA, and say mom or dad lost their job. We do have a special circumstance process. There's a form out on our website. You can just type in special circumstance. It'll come up. It's a PDF, and it lists basically all the different situations that a student can complete this form, submit any supporting documentation into their financial aid counselor. And then what we can do as financial aid professionals is go into the FAFSA and adjust your income down to see by whatever it is. So if it's a job loss, we will reduce your income down to whatever we calculate it as, which then could reduce your SAI down and provide you with some additional money there. Things that we consider here, again, job loss, excessive medical expenses, medical and dental, one-time rollover or capital gain, private elementary or high school costs paid, and again, loss of income, and then there's many others. The one thing to take in to remember is we don't take consumer-related debt, so credit cards, things of that nature, mortgages. It has to be like if there's a job loss. And then again, we try to process those as quickly as we possibly can. My staff may reach back out to you and ask for additional documentation if you do provide one to them. And then we can go ahead and see if we can make an adjustment for you there. I just want to mention that to you. Other ways to reduce the cost or pay, consider payment plans. Maybe, you want to borrow X amount of dollars, but you do have some money that you can pay. So you can, take out a Parent Plus loan or a private loan to help cover that balance. And then also, do a combination, like set up a payment plan. So that way you don't have to borrow as much. Utilize investment income or home equity. Back in the day when interest rates were good, I do know of a couple students whose parents actually borrowed through a home equity line against their home, because again, the interest rates were better than a Parent Plus or some even the private loans that were out there. I don't know if I would recommend doing that during this day and age. Select your dorm room and meal plan carefully. The one thing about Ohio Wesleyan's meal plans is whether, regardless of whatever meal plan that you're in, they have unlimited swipes. So the average meal plan, which I think is the gold plan, it's just they have more dining dollars that they can use, over in Merrick or whatnot. But say if they drop down to the silver, they still have unlimited swipes. So my stepson, who is a senior at Ohio Wesleyan, he got down to the silver plan because he just goes over to Hamilton Williams and he can eat as much as he wants, and he's saving money that way. Now, my stepdaughter, she likes to go over to Merrick and buy the salads and things like that, and those use dining dollars. So she's in the gold plan. So again, once the student gets in there in their freshman year, and they figure out the lay of the land, they can go ahead and select their meal plan. The other thing is select your college dorm. Right now everybody goes into a standard double, but if somebody goes into a quad or something like that, those are less money. We do not adjust the financial aid package down if they're in a cheaper dorm, because we're basically using the average dorm room cost when we build the financial aid package. So again, lower meal plan, maybe staying in a quad, that might be something. And of course, budget your money and reduce your expenses. We try to tell these students this, but you don't really have a lot of money to begin with. Work and save your earnings during the summer. That's what I try to get my kids to do. My stepson works at Panera. My stepdaughter works at Pulp, and actually all my kids work, so they help, save money for their books or anything else that they want to kind of spend their money on. Laurie, can you answer the question just popped in? Can you choose a quad as a freshman?
That's a good question. And Kevin, when you said that about the quad being less expensive, I'm thinking that's actually not the case any longer. It's my understanding that the only difference in cost is between single occupancy and multiple occupancy.
Okay.
So we'll double check on that though. But that was my latest understanding. As a first year student, students would either live in Smith Hall, which are predominantly doubles. Some students might live in Welch Hall, which includes 4-person or quads. But again, it's my understanding that it's multiple occupancy or single occupancy. That's really the only rate change there.
Okay. Yeah, I was just kind of thinking about asking what my stepdaughter did. So I was just talking from experience, and that was a couple of years ago. So if that policy changed, I missed that. Let's see where I'm else. Okay, buy used textbooks, rent books. The other thing that we have is the First Day Complete book program, where it's around $350, $60, and students will have all their books provided to them, basically day one. So that's kind of a good program for folks to kind of tap into. However, if you can find used textbooks cheaper than that, I would certainly recommend that. Of course, there's always the friends and family for assistance. And the other thing I want to mention too, can't stress this, enough. I know we're all thinking about freshman year and all that, but you have to apply for financial aid for all 4 years. So kind of focusing on, it's not just year one. And as Laurie mentioned, the tuition went up like 3%. So again, I've worked at Ohio Wesleyan for 10 years. It's gone up anywhere from like 2 to 3% every single year. So kind of factor that in when you're thinking about that. And I did also mention that, the loans do increase as the students progress, and that kind of helps offset some of those cost increases. But I just want to kind of, reiterate that you have to apply for financial aid for 4 years, and kind of work your budget into that thinking there. Any other additional questions for me or Laurie?
Kevin, I did just confirm on the website that the housing rates, the only difference, multiple occupancy versus single occupancy. And then there's some variation when you get to the senior apartments based on how many people are in your apartment. But as underclassmen, freshmen through junior, essentially, it's just one cost for multiple occupancy and one cost for single occupancy. And
Okay,
that did
thank you.
change relatively recently.
Okay, thanks.
I think they might have asked all their questions, Kevin.
Well,
Yeah.
I just need to say, this has been a great group. We had a whole stockpile of potential questions to pose if there weren't any from the audience, and we didn't have to use any of them. So thanks, I think, to everyone for hanging on. I know financial aid can be one of those topics that is hard to follow and gets confusing. And we appreciate you hanging on and listening and for joining us this evening. Obviously, Kevin's contact information is on this slide. I think Abby answered in the Q&A that we will be posting a recording of this in the next couple of days. So if you wanted to refer back to something, or if you have a friend that couldn't attend tonight, you're welcome to send them that link as well. Abby or Kevin, anything else that we should cover before we finish for the evening?
Did you mention visiting alumni referral?
We didn't, but we have only a handful of days left. If you're not already aware, we offer a visit award that for any student who visits by December 15th, which is this Friday, of their senior year. So if your student visited in their junior year or sophomore year, that still qualifies. They just need to visit any point in time before December 15th of their senior year. You automatically qualify for the $1,000 stackable and renewable visit award. And similarly, we have an alumni referral award. If you know of anybody who graduated from Ohio Wesleyan, they can complete an alumni referral form. It's available on our website for $1,000 stackable renewable award. And again, that has to be received by this Friday as well, December 15th. I also see in the chat or in the Q&A the question about the scholarship competition. They can absolutely register with the website link. They do not need to wait for the official invitation, though the official invitations are rolling out. So if your student is eligible and hasn't received it yet, they will get it soon. That information is already available in their applicant portal, and so students can register through their portal if they would like to. And unfortunately, you can't get more than one alumni referral award. That would be awesome, especially if you knew lots of alums and submitted multiple, but it is only one. I see a question too about, we visited with the soccer coaches and took a tour. This is a great question. The coaches are informed that they need to let us know when recruits visit with them if they do not also include some kind of visit with us. Some coaches are better than that at that than others. If you are unsure if your student is sort of marked in our system as having visited, you can always check with us. We've been reminding coaches that we need to know about that information, and some of them are like, oh yes, I have a whole list I need to send you. So you can certainly connect with either your admission counselor or with the coach directly to make sure that we have record of that visit. And about the alumni referral award, it's confirmation of that is not located in the portal. Again, you can email me or your student's admission counselor to confirm that. Once we start sending financial aid packages, whether or not students are eligible for need-based aid, we do send aid packages that will indicate, here's your alumni referral award, here's your visit award, here's your FAFSA filer award, all of that will be in there. But if you're ever unsure and you want confirmation, you can just contact one of us in the admission office and we can double check. And current students they have to be alums. Unfortunately, we can't have referrals from current students. They need to actually have been graduated already. Oh, Kevin, this is a question for you. What is considered a high SAI? I don't even know if you can characterize that since we're a little
Yeah, I could.
unsure.
Yeah, I could. Anything that's basically over our cost of attendance. So we'll just say anything over $70,000. Then yeah, that's considered someone that really wouldn't qualify for any need-based financial aid.
Another question for you, Kevin. Will the financial aid package tell me the total I will pay for the 24-25 year?
That it will. That it will. I just revised my financial aid award letter so that it follows the college cost transparency initiative. So the CCT, you can kind of Google search that if you want to read up on it if you're bored. Basically, we are sign up with this initiative so that we are clear and transparent about how much it totally costs. So it's going to show you our total cost of education, your free money, your loans, and at the very bottom there's a little box that says how much will I owe, and it's going to give you the total amount for the year, and it'll just say, you know, if the student's going to go both semesters, fall and spring, just divide that number in half.
Okay, awesome. There are no more questions right now, so thank you all for coming. As Laurie said, this has been great. I didn't have to touch any of the questions I had pulled up. So, but if you guys do have additional questions, by all means, you can reach out to our office and Kevin's office, and we're happy to help.
Yeah, if there's anything that I didn't answer, just shoot me an email and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
All right.
Bye, everyone. Have a great night.